There are people who pass through life seeing what's in front of them: faces, places, facts, and feelings. And then there are Scorpios. They don't just see life, they penetrate it. From the outside, Scorpio may appear composed, even distant. But look closer, and you'll find the soul of a mystic hiding behind the eyes of a warrior. While others are busy reacting to the world, Scorpio is reading it. Every pause, every breath, every vibration. And here's the truth. Scorpio doesn't need you to speak to understand you. They feel you. This sign lives in emotional X-rays. They sense betrayal in silence. They find truth in contradiction. They spot buried grief in fake smiles and feel passion behind indifference. It's not just a talent, it's a soul contract. Scorpio was born to be this way. And it's not always easy. From a young age, many Scorpios sense they're different. While their peers play games or recite routines, they're already decoding motives, observing the unspoken, absorbing pain they don't know how to name. This often makes them feel isolated, not out of arrogance, but because they see the fractures no one else admits exist. Imagine being a child in a room full of adults smiling politely, and yet knowing someone is about to break. That's Scorpio's world. They don't seek this truth, it finds them. They're magnetized to depth like moths to flame, not for the drama, but for the transformation that lies beyond it. But let me tell you something that's often missed. Scorpio doesn't crave darkness. They crave truth. And the truth, more often than not, lives in the shadows, hidden behind trauma, buried under fear, locked beneath surface smiles. That's why Scorpio dives deep. Not because they're dark, but because they know that healing begins where pretending ends. In Buddhism, there's a teaching about seeing through illusion. The path to wisdom is not about comfort, it's about awakening. Scorpio embodies this principle effortlessly. They are not fooled by appearances. Like a seasoned monk who can see through ego, Scorpio peers through masks to find the essence beneath. That's why people often feel naked around them, because they are. There's a real story I remember about a Scorpio woman who worked in crisis counseling. She said people would open up to her within 5 minutes, things they hadn't told their partners, therapists, or parents. It's not because I asked the right questions, she said. It's because I listen with something deeper than my ears. That, right there, is the Scorpio gift. But it's also a burden. To constantly perceive what others hide, to feel the unspoken grief in someone's voice or sense betrayal before it happens, is a heavy thing. Scorpio carries the emotional weight of rooms, of relationships, of moments that no one else even realizes exist. This sensitivity isn't weakness. It's an instrument of soul. And because of that, Scorpios often walk alone. Not because they want to, but because solitude is the only place they can hear themselves again. When the world gets too loud with lies, Scorpio retreats not to escape, but to remember who they are beneath the noise. Solitude is not loneliness for Scorpio. It's sacred silence. You know, in many spiritual traditions, the soul's awakening often begins in the wilderness, alone, stripped bare, with no distractions. That's Scorpio's default state. They were born to walk where others fear to tread. They were made to hear what others cannot bear to know. And that's why, when you're lost, you call a Scorpio. When no one else understands, they do. Scorpios are not here to entertain you. They're here to awaken you. And that means, sometimes, they'll trigger you. They'll look at you in ways that make you confront the parts of yourself you've avoided. Not to shame you, but to set you free. That's the paradox. They're not here to hurt. They're here to heal. But the path to healing is not always gentle. Sometimes, it's fire. And Scorpio is that fire. You'll feel it in their gaze. You'll feel it in their silence. You'll feel it in the way they speak one sentence that cuts through all your excuses. That's why they're remembered long after they leave the room. Scorpio energy lingers, like a soul echo, inviting you to look deeper, to feel more, to stop lying to yourself. So why does Scorpio see what others can't? Because they've walked through inner storms and survived. They've died in ways that left no marks and were reborn in silence. And when you've been broken open that deeply, you gain a different kind of sight, not the sight of the eyes, but of the spirit. Scorpio sees with the soul. And perhaps that's their ultimate gift to the world, not just perception, but transformation. Because when Scorpio sees you, not the version you show the world, but the real you, it awakens something. It invites your shadow out of hiding. It dares your truth to stand up. And once you've been seen by a Scorpio, you'll never forget what it feels like to be fully known. Not for your image, but for your essence. Part 2. Into the depths, Scorpio's emotional alchemy. Scorpio doesn't swim in shallow water. While others float on the surface of their feelings, comfortable in denial, numbness, or distraction, Scorpio plunges to the bottom. They want to know what's there, not just in others, but in themselves. This emotional depth is not a choice. It's their nature, and it can feel like both a gift and a curse. Because to live as a Scorpio is to feel everything, not just your own emotions, but sometimes the emotions of everyone in the room. It's to walk into a space and absorb the sadness in the air before anyone says a word. It's to feel joy, not as a passing mood, but as a soul-deep symphony. And it's to grieve with the weight of generations, even if you don't know why. Many Scorpios describe their emotions like a storm, unpredictable, powerful, beautiful, terrifying. But what's remarkable is not just that they survive the storm. It's that they learn to harness it. That's what emotional alchemy is, the ability to transform emotional pain into power, heartbreak into purpose, wounds into wisdom. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him Daniel, a Scorpio I met during a retreat focused on grief and renewal. He had lost his father suddenly and had refused to cry for years. But during one quiet moment, he looked up and said, "I feel like if I let it all out, I'll never stop." But that night, under the stars, he broke. And what followed wasn't chaos, it was release. Raw, primal, healing. And afterward, he became a grief counselor. He took his own devastation and made it into a path for others. That is Scorpio's alchemy. Where others suppress, Scorpio channels. They don't numb themselves. They transmute. Rage becomes art. Grief becomes empathy. Fear becomes strategy. Even jealousy, yes, one of Scorpio's famous traits, becomes a doorway to understanding where love meets insecurity. In Buddhist psychology, this mirrors the concept of defilements as fuel for awakening. Instead of rejecting difficult emotions, we are taught to look directly into them, to examine the source, the root, the illusion. Scorpio already lives this path. They don't run from what's dark. They confront it, integrate it, and evolve through it. This is not comfortable work. This is soul work. It's no wonder Scorpio is associated with death and rebirth, not literal death, but the death of ego, illusions, and false identities. Scorpios go through more internal transformations in a decade than most people do in a lifetime. They reinvent themselves not for show, but for survival. And with every fall, they rise differently, more powerful, more self-aware, more aligned. You may notice this if you know a Scorpio well. They go quiet before something big changes in their life. Silence, for them, is sacred preparation. They feel the rumble before the quake. They know when something must die, even if it's a belief, a relationship, or a part of themselves. And when that time comes, they don't resist. They burn. Because Scorpio understands that true transformation doesn't come from wishing or talking. It comes from the fire, from choosing to let go of the old story and write a new one. And that means letting go of comfort, familiarity, sometimes even identity. This is why their emotional world can seem intense to others. But for Scorpio, intensity is not danger, it is truth. They don't fear emotional extremes. They were built for them. They learn to ride the currents, to descend into heartbreak and find meaning in the ruins. To love someone who can do this is to witness a living example of resilience, of raw emotional courage, of the sacred art of healing not by escaping, but by embracing. And that's why Scorpios often become healers, whether through profession or presence. They're the friend who won't let you lie to yourself, the partner who sees through your smiles and asks the real question, the stranger who gives you one sentence that changes your life. They don't offer shallow comfort. They offer truth. And yes, it can be uncomfortable, but it's the discomfort that opens the door. In the spiritual life, transformation rarely comes through peace alone. It often arrives through disruption when the old structure cracks. Scorpio is the energy of that sacred breaking, not to destroy, but to clear the way. And in that space, something new can be born. So if you are close to a Scorpio, cherish them, even when they challenge you, especially when they challenge you, because they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to help you rise. They are emotional warriors, not armored with avoidance, but armored with self-knowledge. They are truth bearers, not because they read books, but because they've read their own soul. They are alchemists, not because they avoid the dark, but because they've learned how to bring light into it. Scorpio doesn't run from emotions. They become the container for them. And when you've walked that path of loving, breaking, grieving, rising, you earn a different kind of power. One that's not about control, but compassion. And that's what makes Scorpio so rare. Not their passion, not their intensity, but their willingness to feel it all and come back wiser, softer, and stronger. Part 3. Sacred Love, Sacred Rage, the Power of Loyalty and Transformation. When a Scorpio loves you, it is never halfway. It is not hesitant, not polite, not restrained. It is deep, consuming, and unforgettable. It is sacred. To be loved by a Scorpio is to be seen, fully, frighteningly, and unconditionally. There is no mask you can wear, no version of yourself you can fake. They love not who you pretend to be, but who you truly are, even the parts you haven't accepted yet. But here's what few understand. For Scorpio, love is not casual. It is not an accessory. It is a soul contract. And that is why betrayal cuts so deeply. When you betray a Scorpio, you don't just break their heart, you shatter their faith. In the connection, in the sacredness of what you shared, in the version of you they believed in. And when that happens, their reaction isn't just sadness. It is sacred rage. You see, Scorpio is one of the only signs that holds both sacred love and sacred rage in equal intensity. Not because they are volatile, but because both come from the same place, devotion. Their love is a force of protection. They love with their body, their mind, their energy, and their silence. They will hold your hand through the storm, defend you when no one else will, and carry your pain if you cannot bear it. But if you betray their loyalty, their fire becomes transformative, not destructive, but revelatory. Because Scorpio's rage is not about revenge. It is about truth. It is about exposing what was false so that something real can take its place. And this, ironically, is part of their love too. Let me tell you about Anna, a Scorpio woman who loved deeply, fiercely, and loyally. She gave her partner everything: trust, emotional support, her full presence. But when she discovered his emotional betrayal, not cheating, but years of lies, she didn't explode. She didn't scream. She walked away with silence sharper than any blade. And when I asked her why, she said, "I don't destroy people. I destroy illusions." That's Scorpio. They don't seek to hurt. They seek to awaken. In Buddhist practice, there's a powerful teaching. To see clearly is to love truly. Scorpio lives this. They love you even when you're messy, even when you're lost. But they will never tolerate your lies, not to them, and especially not to yourself. This is why Scorpio is often feared. Not because they are cruel, but because they cannot be fooled. You can lie to the world, but not to them. And it's why their love transforms you. Because being loved by a Scorpio invites your truest self forward. It challenges you to rise into who you were meant to be. But make no mistake, Scorpio's loyalty is not given lightly. They watch. They feel. They test, subtly, intuitively. Not to play games, but to protect their heart. Because once they let you in, it's not just emotional. It's spiritual. They merge. Energetically, psychically, emotionally. They become part of you. And that bond, once formed, is unlike anything else in the zodiac. In the stillness of love, they are tender. In the heat of protection, they are fierce. And in the face of betrayal, they are final. There's no halfway return from betrayal for Scorpio. They don't reopen doors once trust has been broken. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because to reopen the door would be to dishonor the truth they stand for. And yet, even in heartbreak, they grow. Scorpio's superpower is not just passion. It is transformation. They will grieve deeply. They will descend into their sorrow like entering a sacred temple. But when they emerge, they will be reborn sharper, wiser, more aligned. Their heart may scar, but it never stays shattered. And in that healing, they often become stronger than before. This is what sets Scorpio apart. Their pain doesn't make them bitter. It makes them better. It hones their ability to love with precision and presence. To choose relationships based on energetic alignment, not romantic illusion. Their love evolves just like they do. It matures. It deepens. It becomes a quiet force that sustains, not a fire that burns out, but a steady flame that endures. And those lucky enough to be loved by a Scorpio in this evolved state, they will tell you, it feels like being home. A home built on truth, protected by loyalty, and lit by a flame that never dies. So, if you ever find yourself in the presence of a Scorpio's love, don't take it lightly. It is sacred. It is rare. It is earned. And once it's gone, no amount of apologies will bring it back. Part 4. The Hidden Spiritual Path, Scorpio, and the Unseen World. Not all who wander are lost, and not all who see use their eyes. Scorpio walks with one foot in this world, and the other in a realm few ever touch. Theirs is a path that winds between shadows and starlight, silence and revelation. They are seekers of the unseen, interpreters of the invisible, and guardians of what cannot be explained but is undeniably real. There is something ancient in the Scorpio soul, a memory that stretches beyond lifetimes. Many Scorpios are born feeling like old souls, watchful, reflective, and uncannily intuitive. They don't always know why they feel things before they happen, why dreams speak louder than people, or why silence often contains more meaning than conversation. But in time, they learn, this isn't imagination. It's connection. Scorpio is wired for depth, emotionally, yes, but also spiritually. They are drawn to mysteries like iron to magnet. Astrology, psychology, mysticism, dreams, symbolism, quantum theory, death, rebirth, karma. These are not hobbies. These are languages their soul already speaks. And what others dismiss as woo-woo, Scorpio understands as coded truth. Their dreams, for example, are rarely random. Many Scorpios report vivid, recurring, symbolic dreamscapes from a young age, sometimes prophetic, other times archetypal. In spiritual terms, we'd say Scorpio dreams are portals, places where the subconscious reveals soul messages. They don't dream in distractions. They dream in downloads. Even in waking life, Scorpio's intuition borders on the psychic. They walk into a room and instantly sense what's off. They meet someone new and feel both the story and the wound before words are exchanged. It's not magic, it's spiritual radar, a refined sensitivity to energy, emotion, vibration. And the more a Scorpio trusts this inner compass, the more accurate and guiding it becomes. There's an old Buddhist saying, the truth is not always visible, but it is always present. Scorpio lives this every day. They do not take things at face value, not because they're skeptical, but because they've seen too much. They know what it's like to be lied to wear masks, to bury pain. So they choose to look deeper, into people, into systems, into themselves. And this inner investigation often brings them to the edge of spiritual awakening. Scorpio is the sign most associated with death and rebirth, not physical death, but symbolic, emotional, spiritual death. The shedding of skins, the burning of false identities, the release of attachments. These are not tragedies in Scorpio's world. They are initiations. Every major spiritual path, be it Buddhism, shamanism, Gnosticism, includes a descent, a confrontation with the shadow, a journey into the underworld. Scorpio walks this path instinctively. They don't need to be told how to navigate darkness. They understand that it's part of the light. And that is why, even in times of despair, they do not panic. They wait. They listen. They transform. Scorpio's spiritual power is not flashy. It's quiet. It moves like water, like breath, like a presence that shifts a room without a word. That's why being near a Scorpio can feel different. You feel watched, yes, but also witnessed. You feel read, but also remembered. You feel seen, even if you haven't said a thing. That's the Scorpio gift. They don't just observe your behavior, they feel your energy. They read your patterns. And they often know who you are before you've figured it out yourself. But with this power comes a burden. Because when you see beneath the surface of the world, you can't unsee. Scorpio often feels disillusioned by the superficiality of modern life, by small talk, by false positivity, by spiritual bypassing. They don't crave comfort. They crave authenticity. Even if that authenticity is raw, broken, or terrifying. That's why many Scorpios retreat from the spotlight. Not because they're shy, but because they're tuned to a different frequency. And when they do speak, it's not often, but it matters. A Scorpio's words cut through noise. They're not interested in being heard. They're interested in being true. This is what makes them powerful spiritual catalysts. They don't preach. They embody. They don't convert. They confront. And just by being who they are, they awaken something dormant in others. A memory, a question, a feeling, a flame. You'll often find Scorpio energy at thresholds, moments of loss, of birth, of breakthrough. They are doulas of death and midwives of transformation. Whether standing at a hospital bedside, guiding someone through heartbreak, or silently holding space at a funeral, they are not afraid. Because they know something most don't. That the end is never the end. It's just the beginning of something deeper. So if you've ever met a Scorpio who changed you, without effort, without force, know this, it wasn't coincidence. It was soul remembering soul. A recognition beyond logic. A spark passed in silence. Scorpio walks the hidden path. The one that disappears behind veils and reappears in dreams. And while most seek light for comfort, Scorpio enters darkness for truth. They are not afraid of shadows. They were born to guide others through them. Part 5. Rebirth through pain. How Scorpios become the phoenix. If there is one symbol that encapsulates the essence of Scorpio, it is the phoenix. The mythical bird that burns to ashes, only to rise again, stronger, purer, more powerful. This is not poetry to Scorpio. It is biography. Because every Scorpio, in some form, lives this pattern: break, burn, rise. Pain is not something they avoid. It's something they endure. More than that, it's something they learn from, transform through, and eventually alchemize into wisdom. Most people run from suffering. Scorpio walks toward it, but not out of self-destruction, out of soul evolution. They understand something many fear to acknowledge: that pain is the gatekeeper of transformation. That healing isn't found by bypassing grief, but by moving through it. That sometimes we must break open to truly grow. This is where Scorpio becomes the phoenix. Let me tell you about Marcus, a Scorpio man I met during a spiritual mentorship circle. He was once a successful entrepreneur. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but on the inside, he was quietly crumbling. He had sacrificed authenticity for achievement, silence for success. And then it all collapsed. His business, his marriage, his identity. He vanished for a year. No social media, no emails, just quiet. When he re-emerged, he had become a therapist, specializing in midlife crisis recovery. He told me, "Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. I died, and then I came back with my soul intact." That's Scorpio transformation. Not everyone can understand this kind of rebirth. It's not a clean process. It's messy, lonely, brutal. It often includes identity death, the loss of who you thought you were, who the world told you to be. But Scorpio doesn't just survive these inner deaths. They need them, because each one strips away another layer of illusion. Each one brings them closer to their essence. Each one refines the fire of who they are. In Buddhist teachings, there's a concept known as samsara, the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. Most fear these cycles. Scorpio embraces them. They live them not just once, but again and again, within a single lifetime. That's why Scorpio is so emotionally evolved, so spiritually complex, so hard to define, because they have lived many lives in one. They've died as the victim, reborn as the healer. They've collapsed as the lover, rebuilt as the guardian. They've fallen as the naive, risen as the wise. This cycle, though painful, is not punishment. It is refinement. And it gives Scorpio a power that can't be faked or taught. Earned strength. You feel it when you talk to them. That unshakable presence. That depth that doesn't need words. That certainty that they've seen the dark and chosen to come back. Not bitter, but better. And that's why people trust Scorpio in their darkest moments. Because they know Scorpio's been there. And they made it out alive. They are not afraid of your tears, your rage, your guilt, your shadow. They've danced with their own and learned the rhythm of healing. But this power comes at a cost. Scorpios often face betrayal, abandonment, and loss more than others. Not because the universe is cruel, but because their soul chose the path of transformation. It's as if life itself keeps sharpening them, testing them, stripping them, forging them, until only the truth remains. And with every fall, they rise more fiercely aligned with their soul's purpose. Even their solitude, which can seem cold to outsiders, is sacred. It is in those quiet, crumbling moments that Scorpio remembers who they are, that they reconnect with their fire, that they prepare for their next evolution. They don't just bounce back. They are reborn. And when they return, don't expect the same person. Scorpio doesn't go back. They only go forward. Every death leaves behind a shell, and every rebirth emerges with new light, new insight, new clarity. So if you've ever watched a Scorpio disappear, only to return more luminous than ever, know this. They didn't just heal, they transformed. And in doing so, they give the world a gift. The living example that pain doesn't have to destroy you. It can define you, and then set you free. Part 6. Final reflection. The Scorpio legacy and what we must remember. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when silence speaks louder than sound, when a glance holds more truth than a lifetime of words, and when transformation is no longer just a hope, but a memory. That moment belongs to Scorpio. They are not just a zodiac sign. They are a path, a sacred path, One that wins through shadow and spirit, through pain and purpose. One that doesn't promise comfort, but guarantees evolution. The legacy of Scorpio is not fame, not applause, not recognition. It is impact, the kind that cannot always be seen but is always felt. They are the people who show up when others walk away. The ones who hold space when the world falls apart. The ones who call you out not to hurt you, but to wake you. The ones who love you deeply, fiercely, silently, and often from a distance. They do not need validation. Their validation comes from alignment. They do not crave followers. They crave truth. And they do not try to be powerful. They are because they have walked through the fire and came back holding light. And that is what we must remember about Scorpio. Diamond with it out there are not here to be understood. They are here to understand. Diamond with it out there are not here to be liked. They are here to be real. Diamond with it out there are not here to avoid the dark. They are here to teach us that the dark is where the soul finds its voice. There is a kind of sacred solitude to Scorpio that many mistake for coldness. But it's not distance. It's reverence. For truth. For energy. For spirit. Because Scorpio knows what few are willing to learn. That not everything sacred is loud. Some sacred things whisper. Some sacred things burn. Some sacred things break you, and in doing so, bless you. And Scorpio is the guardian of those sacred things. If you have ever loved a Scorpio, lost a Scorpio, or simply crossed paths with one, something in you was changed. You felt the mirror they held up to your soul. You felt the fire they didn't speak about but radiated in silence. You felt seen, not just for who you were, but for who you could become. And perhaps that is Scorpio's most powerful gift. They do not just see your potential. They demand it. They invite the death of who you are not. So the birth of who you truly are can begin. Just like the phoenix, they remind us that it's okay to fall. It's okay to burn. It's okay to lose everything. As long as you remember who you were in the ashes. So what can we learn from Scorpio? We can learn to feel more deeply, to speak less, but say more, to stop fearing endings and start honoring rebirth, to hold others with depth, and to walk through our own fire, knowing we will rise. Scorpio is not here to soothe your ego. They're here to awaken your soul. So when the noise of the world gets too loud, when everyone is pretending, when you've lost your way and you don't know who to trust, find the Scorpio, or better yet, find that Scorpio energy inside yourself, because somewhere deep within you is the same sacred fire waiting to rise. Fire call to action for your audience. Ketuk video, fire. If this journey into the soul of Scorpio moves something in you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the Path to Buddhist Wisdom for more zodiac reflections that go beyond the stars and into the spirit, because we are not here just to know our signs. We are here to live them.